to briefly introduce myself, especially for those who are attending my webinar for the first time. My name is Saqib, and I'm the product lead at GMAT Viz. I'm also the principal architect of the whole GMAT Viz platform. So whatever intelligence and the courses that you see played, I was the principal. I was basically the main part of that project. I've been teaching for about, I've been teaching and I've been in this tech industry for about 10 years now, and I primarily like to teach quant, apart from building products. So I've taken my GMAT, I have a Q50, and I've also taken the Indian version of the GMAT, which is known as CAT, and I do have a 99 percentile in quant in that exam too. That's briefly about myself. The progression of the webinar is going to remain the same as usual. I'll be starting off by talking about the main purpose of this webinar, which is when and why you need to take variables. And then I'll be keeping about 10 minutes at the end if you feel like asking any questions. Let's say you did not understand anything during the webinar and you want me to go back. Or let's just say if you want to ask me questions related to GMAT prep or quant prep, or also about our course, GMAT Viz course, feel free to ask me those questions at the end of the webinar, guys. Okay. This is again only for those people who are attending it for the first time. If you aren't aware of it, this is like a webinar series. We have been conducting it since Feb 13th, and we are almost done with our, basically today is our 9th session, as you can see out here. We are currently doing this. So there are almost 8 sessions done. If you haven't seen these webinars, I would highly recommend that you look at it. You'll find these videos on our YouTube platform. If you want, I can share the link with you all. And the next webinar tomorrow is on CR frameworks. A lot of people do find it hard to pre-think. So we will be providing you some structured guidelines on how and what in which kind of questions, what is the right way of thinking. So we have certain frameworks that can help you do that. So if you're struggling in CR and if you want to learn new methodologies, I would highly recommend attending the tomorrow's session on CR also. Okay. With that, let me get into the main part of the webinar, which is X factor. Why should we take X? Now, before delving into the part where, where I explain why you need to take X, let me ask you a question. What do you think, like when you're solving question, why do you end up making a mistake? Can you tell me why does this happen? Anyone? Okay, Carla says wrong representation or given lack of focus and reading too fast. Okay, Andrew's asking for the link. So this is the link. This is the YouTube link. If you want to, so you can. I would recommend subscribing to this link. We upload all our videos out here. Okay. Apart from that, let me look. What are you answering? So John says incorrect assumption, a calculation mistake, picking the wrong strategy. Something. Okay. So most of you are on point. See, one of the reason why you make a mistake, and let me tell you the approach because of which you end up making a mistake is, you start by reading the question. You read it in one go. Okay, and then you start solving the question. Without any strategy in mind. You just feel that, okay, these are the information given, let me see what I can do. So most of the time you are not clear about the right strategy, or as someone mentioned out here, I think chat, that picking the wrong strategy sometimes. Yeah, so that is one of the reasons that you end up picking up the wrong strategy, and or no strategy at all, and because of that you end up making a mistake because you're under time pressure. You want to complete it in 2 minutes, and that mostly leads to making a lot of calculation mistakes. The reason I'm talking about this approach, especially in this webinar, is because when it comes to translation, when it comes to questions where you need to take a variable, you need to, first of all, analyze these question stem really well. If you just start reading the question and you read it in one go and you solve it very quickly, and you try to solve it very quickly, I'm not saying you'll be able to do, you definitely get the answer, but when you try that, sometimes you don't, after a certain point of time, after wasting, let's say, 1.5 minutes, you might realize you don't know how to use that information properly, and you don't know what to do, how to set up that equation. And that is where, when you're solving any question, the best and the right approach, and this is what I advocate almost every time in all my webinars, is that you should always read pause while reading, analyze, okay, the information that is given to you, jot down all the information, which I think is a very, really important thing. So for example, if it is given to me that, say, Amy is riding a bicycle at 10 miles per hour or something like that, I would jot down that information 10 miles per hour on my piece of paper. I'll pause and jot down. That's very important, okay? Not that I'll read everything and then started jotting down the information. That's not the right strategy. Okay, and there's another guy who's riding the bicycle, but I don't know the speed. So I know after reading that information, I need to pause and maybe take a variable if required for that particular person, because I don't know the speed of that person. If we read it in one go, the whole question, and then try and solve the question, then what's going to happen is it's very difficult to retain all the information. Retaining the information is very difficult. So you might have to go back to the question again and again. And that is something where you'll waste a lot of time. And while rereading, you might also not realize what kind of variables you need to take and why do you need to take variables. But if you have a question stem which you keep on breaking down in smaller chunks and writing down, okay, this is giving me an actual information. This is telling me about something, but that information is not there. So let me take a variable for that thing. It would be much more easy to know, okay, this is a question where I might not do solve this question without taking a variable. Okay. And of course, after jotting down all the information, instead of directly jumping into creating some calculations or doing some calculations, you should maybe pause for about, I would say, 10-15 seconds and think, okay, with all this information, what can I do with this? How do I set up my equation? So if I need X, what kind of equations can I set? And is there any way to set it or not also? Okay, or is there information given in the question that can help me set an equation automatically? Or is there a concept that I'm missing, I haven't used? So if it's a time and distance question, I know that I need to use distance equal to speed time times speed multiplied by time. So can I do that out here? Once you ask those questions and once you realize, okay, I cannot solve this question without this formula, you would know how to approach the question. Okay, so picking the right strategy would only happen, especially when you have the information with you. Then only you will be able to figure out exactly how you need to solve and you need to ask yourself that questions. Okay, so what I'm going to basically do is, I'm going to talk about two skills first, which will help you in in solving any question. Now, these skills that I'm talking about, they are applicable almost everywhere, okay, in most of the questions. One of the skills is obviously the skill of translation. If you're not aware of this word, it's a translation. Basically, when we talk in mathematical term, is when you see a wordy question, okay, and I'll show you an example also, which we really call a word problem question. What are you able to disseminate the information and set up an equation or not? If you're able to set up an equation, then your translation skill is good. Okay. The other skill which is important in most of the difficult questions is the skill of inference. So you should be able to read a question and be able to understand, okay, there'll be a lot of information which will be given indirectly. You'll have to read and then understand what is the meaning of this. A simple example could be like this. So for example, if I tell you a number is divisible by exactly two positive numbers, okay? Let's say if I give you an information like this, okay? Can anyone tell me what is the implicit assumption out here, inference out here? The moment you get an information like this, a number is divisible by exactly two positive numbers, what inference would you draw from this? Anyone? What would be the inference? A number is divisible by exactly two positive numbers. What kind of inference would we draw? Okay, correct. Exactly. So this is what I know. Prime numbers is Deepak, you're correct. So if a number is divisible by exactly two positive integers, in fact, I should not write numbers. I should be saying two positive integers. Then that would basically mean that the number that we are talking about is a prime number. Now, if you're not aware of properties of prime numbers, if your concept is not that, it's like it's not, if you haven't brushed up your concept, then you might miss out on these assumptions. The moment you miss out on these assumptions, you might not know how to set up your equation also, and even if you set up an equation, you might not know what to do with it. Okay, and now the purpose of this webinar, in this case, I'll be focusing on this a lot. Okay, we might take up some other webinars where we'll talk about skill of inference also. But in this webinar, I would be helping you understand how to break down the information and set up an equation. And I'll give you an example also. We won't be solving these two questions, but these are just two examples to help you understand what do I mean by translation. Now, example one is an example where I don't need any translation as such, okay? Translation is not needed here. Why is it not needed? Because I already have my two equations. So all I need to do is simplify and solve. Okay, that's all is needed out here. Okay, this is a question which I'm talking about where the translation skills comes into picture, where you have a lot of like all the information that is given is in the form of a paragraph or a sentence, no equations at all, and it will be important for you to know break down the information like this: from here to here what information is given, from here to here what information is given, from here to here what information is given, and what is being asked. This is how you need to break down, and I'm going to show you in future examples, the ones that we'll be doing now. I'm just trying to give you a high level idea of what I'm talking about here. You should be, by the end of this webinar, you should be able to solve exactly the way I'm trying to tell you to do. To pause, break, set up equation, decide what you need to do, and then only, solve the equations if you need to. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 6 questions, and through the help of these 6 questions, I'm going to show you what is the right way of solving the question. The process is going to remain the same as has been for the last few webinars. I'll give you a question. I'll give you the option of solving it on your own. Now, keep in mind that the question that I'm taking, there could be other ways to solve it. I want to put that disclaimer now only. Okay, so there could be a way where it could be solved without taking a variable, but I would be showing those questions today by using variables only. Okay, so don't come up and say, hey, this can be solved without variable, why are we taking it? Okay, I would request you not to do that. I'm quite aware that might be other ways of doing it too. Okay, so let me show you the first question. The process is simple. I'll give you 2.5 minutes to solve it. You try your best taking a variable or without a variable to solve it, and then I'm going to show you how you need to approach the question. Okay. I'll also be adding up a poll here. Once again, I will be requesting you to mark your answer only in the poll. Okay, do not put your response in the chat box. I'll be deleting it. I don't want anyone to get biased with the answers. Okay, so you have the poll. I'm sure everyone should be able to see the poll, and you have about 2.5 minutes to do this one. Okay, and there are good conceptual learnings also in this question. So even if you know how to take variables, I'm sure that you're going to learn some new concepts today. Okay, so try it out. Poll and not in the chat box. Even if you want to send me your response in a chat box, if you want, then there's an option to send me a private message. You can use that option if you want to, but don't send a public response and let everyone know what you think the answer would be. Another 30 seconds, and then I'm going to end the poll. So those of you who haven't responded, please do so quickly. No problem. That's okay. If you want to let me know, you can know it on the chat saying that's totally fine. 10 seconds, guys. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay, so 70% of you think that the answer should be C. Okay, guys, you all 70% of you guys fell for that trap. So there's a C trap in this question, and you ended up marking this as the answer, which is incorrect. And let me tell you why is it incorrect, okay? Remember a few minutes back, I was talking about things like implicit assumption, implicit inferences, right? This is going to play a role in solving this question. Okay, for us, the difficulty level is close to 650. Okay. It might seem like a really easy question. Some of you might think, hey, this looks like a 550 level question. There's nothing to do. It's easy. Two variables, two equations. Let me get the answer. But unfortunately, that's not the case in this one. And let me tell you why. So hopefully in this case, setting up the equation was not a problem. We are given here, and let me show you how I would have written the equation. So here it's given that Bob bought, oops, Bob bought only two types of chocolate. Okay, so this is the information with which I cannot do much. Two types of chocolates, that's easy to retain, so I won't be writing anything. Now, suppose that it's written eclairs that cost $1.25 per chocolate. So if I'm solving it in exam, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, cost of eclairs is basically $1.25 per chocolate. Okay, and the cost of Kit Kat. So cost of Kit Kat is $0.6 per chocolate. Okay. So both the important information jotted down. I need to find out how many chocolates did he buy. So I'm looking for the number of chocolates. Okay. Number of eclairs. If you want to be more precise, you can say number of eclairs. Now, usually when I see questions like this, though this is not necessary, but whenever you have a question which is based on cost or number of units, I usually try to make a table if required. In this case, it's not. This is an easy question, but I just want to show you how you can do it. So what I do is I write the cost per chocolate here and the number of units here. So this representation might help you sometimes. So I just want to show it to you once. Unit. Okay, so cost 1.25, 0.6, and I don't know the number of units of in both these cases. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just assume this to be maybe E and this as K. That's all I can do. And I can say total cost. When I say total cost, that is total cost for eclairs would be 1.25 E. So cost multiplied by number of units, and this is going to be 0.6 K. Okay. I cannot do anything else as far as the question stem is concerned. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move to the first statement. Okay. Most of you, I'm sure, did that only. The one thing which I think would have you could have also done before moving to the first statement is made another inference. Okay. Can anyone tell me what can I infer about this number of units, E and K? It's not mentioned, but what can I do with this information? Rohan, I just mentioned it's close to 650. The difficulty level is 650. Okay, Harsh says E and K are integers. Exactly. So that is an information you should jot down, saying they are integers. And since it's clearly saying that Bob bought only two types of chocolates, that means he must have bought two types of chocolates. So I'm going to write that they are going to be, my pen is acting up today. I don't know why. Just one sec. I'm going to write that they are positive integers. Okay, I'm going to mention that. So that's one information which as I told you, these are implicit inferences that you should be able to draw. Okay, they won't be mentioned directly, but you have to do that because these can help you get your answer. Now, let's go to the first statement. So the first statement is that he spent a total of $14.8 to buy chocolates. Total. Now, see, I already know the cost, the total amount that I'm taking. So I can say 1.25E plus 0.6K is equal to 14.8. Now, most of you would discard this statement. In fact, 70% of you discarded this statement saying that there are two variables, single equation, I cannot get my answer. Okay. Now, in this case, please keep in mind that if you have a single equation with two variables, and if you do not have any other information, then obviously then the answer would then this is not sufficient to get the answer. But sometimes if you have some implicit information, like information such as this, that E and K are positive integers, or some information, more information of the variable, I would request you to try and solve the question. Okay, try and see if you can use this information to get a unique answer, because at the end of the day you're looking for a unique answer. That's all. Okay, so number of ways of doing it. One way is people do hit and trial, which I am not a fan of. So you can plug values of 1 or 2, 3, 4 and keep on checking till you get 14.8. What I prefer to do is, first of all, is simplify. Okay. Now, what do I mean by simplification? I would first of all get rid of the decimal points. So I can write this as 125 upon 100, 6 by 10, 148 by 10 if I want to. Now this is basically, if you cancel by 25, you'll get 5 by 4, 3 by 5, and here you would get 74 by 5. And because I want an equation, there are better ways to doing it. I'm just taking the longer way. You can multiply all sides by 20 and end up getting 25e plus 12k, and this would give you 296. So first of all, you should simplify it, okay? Remove the decimal points, get rid of it, and have a simple, neat, clean equation with you. Now, post that, you can do hit and trial if you want to, but I would not like to do in hit and trial. I would do again simplify only, but there's a different way of simplifying it. And this is very important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to the next slide to show the simplification. I'm just going to use this equation, okay? So I'm taking it to the next slide. So I have 25e plus 12k is equal to 296. Now what you do is you take the variable with a bigger coefficient to the other side. Okay, you write it like this. And you bring this 12, you divide both sides by 12 and end up getting this. Okay, so I hope so far it is clear. Now, what I do is I try to break down the numerator in such a way that I can I split it into such a way that I get some multiples of 12 here. Like for example, 296. Let's divide 296 by 12. Okay, so if I divide 296 by 12, I get this. So can I write 296 as 12 times 24 plus 8? So I'm splitting it up. Okay. Now 25e can be written as 24e minus e, right? Why am I doing this? I'm doing this and I'm showing the calculation here for a moment, that let's say if you have a plus b by c, for example, okay, then we can split it and write it like this. I'm going to use this concept to solve the question. So what I can do is I can take 12 times 24 minus 24e by 12 in one place. And I can take 8 minus e by 12 at the other place. So I've taken 8 minus e in one part and 12 times 24 minus 24 in the other part. And this ends up giving me k is equal to, so this on the left hand side, we already had a k. So k is equal to, you can take the 12 cancel out and get 24 minus 2e plus 8 minus e by 12. Now this might see a long calculation, but understand this, that I'm trying to teach you this. I'm going very slowly. Once you get used to it, it would become really fast. So you'll know that, okay, I need to take everything to the other side and then split it. That's the two things that I'm doing. Now you might ask, how can this help me? Remember that I'm looking for integers. Okay, I'm looking for integer values for both k and e. Now, what is the first integer value that I can put here so that this gives me an integer? This needs to be an integer. Can anyone tell me what value of e should I put here so that I can get an integer? Because k has to be an integer. So 24 minus 2 is obviously an integer, but I want to get rid of this fraction part. So what is the first value of e that I can put here? Okay, Harsh says 8, correct. Good. So always try to see if you can make this 0. So what you can do is you can put e is equal to 8. If I put e is equal to 8, see what's going to happen. You'll get 24 minus 2 times 8 plus 8 minus 8 would give you 0. Okay. And this gives you k is equal to 8. So you get k is equal to 8. So when e is equal to 8, k is equal to 8, that is one of your value. Now, what's going to happen is if you try and increase the value, think about it. If I take the next value, for example, if I take e is equal to 20, because if I take 20 also, then also I'll get an integer. 24 minus 2 times 20 plus 8 minus 20 would give you minus 12. But notice one thing, that if I put 20, I'm getting a negative number. 24 minus 40 would give you a negative number. And I did make an inference before that I need to be, the values need to be positive. Okay. So you should be able to infer again that, hey, no higher values of e are possible. I cannot take any higher value out here. So that's not going to work for me. Okay, if that's not going to work, that means there are no more solutions of E that you can put. And from statement 1 only, you're getting a unique answer. You can say that the only possible case is that when E is equal to 8, K is equal to 8, I'll end up spending $14.8 to buy the chocolates. That is why statement 1 is sufficient, because it is telling you that you need to buy exactly 8 eclairs. So I'll pause here for a moment. Let me know if this part is clear or not. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Let me bring up a yes and no poll. If it's clear, please mark yes. So I'll summarize the learning for you, okay? Number one learning is when you're looking at the question stem, when you're writing down your information before going to the statement 1, always be in the lookout for implicit assumptions like positive integers, negative integers. That's number 1. Number 2 is obviously you need to set up your equation. To set up your equation, do take your variables and set up your equation. Number 3 learning is that if you have a single equation with 2 variables, don't think that you will not be able to get any more answers. Okay, don't think that way, that no more answers are possible. If you have any additional information, like in this case we had an additional information that E and K should be positive integers, okay, then you should apply this methodology to figure out if there's a possible way to solve this question. Now, what's a possible way to solve this question? The possible way is to first of all simplify and get an equation. Okay, once you get an equation, you need to break it down into such a way that you get a simplified form of K. Now I can see Himani is asking me, please suggest a shorter solution. Himani, see, I'm explaining this. That is why it looks like a longer solution. But notice there are only 4 to 5 steps involved. That's point number 1. Number 2, Himani, the only alternate solution that is there, if you don't want to use this method, is hit and trial. Okay. Now, if you want to do hit and trial, please, you can try it out, but I would strongly recommend against it, because this is again a very long method to do. You'll have to keep on checking. Think about it. If you wanted to do hit and trial here, what would you do? You'll put E is equal to 1, E is equal to 2, 3, 4. You have to end up putting 8 values to check when will you get 296. And that's not a very, a smart way of solving question. So I would recommend sticking to this methodology if you can. There are a lot of questions in the special equation lesson. If you are a GMAT with student, you can go to special equation where we have given such questions in boosters. So if you practice 3 to 4 questions like these, you will get used to it. So such kind of questions are there in the quizzes, in the boosters. If you try 2, 3, 4, it should be okay. Aditya is asking why no more values. Aditya, explain. Now see, if you the first value that worked was 8. Now the moment I put 12, or if I go, sorry, not 12, basically the moment I put 20, why I'm putting 20? Because I want the numerator to be a multiple of 12. So if I put 20 and so on and so forth, 32, these values basically are giving, these values are all giving me negative value of K. And I want a positive value of K. Since I'm not getting negative values of A, I don't need to check for higher values of A anymore. I can infer that this has to be the only possible case. I hope it's clear, Aditya, Akansha. I hope this part is perfectly clear. If you have doubts, ask. Firas, I'll come to that, to that answer. Just give me 1 sec. But is this statement 1 part is clear or not? Yeah, Rohit, if you are making certain inferences to figure out how to get, 6 at the end or something like that, then you can do that, as long as you're not doing a hit and trial. Hit and trial is not a good way of doing it, solving the question. That's not going to work. And why were you looking at 8? I think you should get a 6 at the end. So getting a 6 could be, there could be a number of way of getting it, right? So I still don't think it's a very optimal way. If you have got the answer, then good. But I would not have gone with it in this one. Okay, and see, understand the methodologies that you're saying, Rohit or Rohan, whatever you came up with, these are going to work for 1 or 2 equations. It's not a, how do I put it, a universal methodology. The ones that you all are suggesting are methodologies which will work for one specific equation. It's not going to work for all and every kind of. So for every new equation that you come across, you will have to think of such inferences to come up with the answer. The methodology that I have taught, and I'm not saying that it is the best, but the methodology that I have taught is a universal way of solving questions. You'll always get the answer, always. You don't have to worry about it. Kelsey, the reason for getting, because the denominator I have 12, okay, that is why I'm trying to break down the numerator in such a way. So I don't want to work with 296. It's a big number. So I'm breaking it down such a way that at the end I'm left with a smaller expression, an expression that is easier to work with. Okay. Yes, Aditya, k becomes negative. That's correct. Since k is becoming negative, that is why I'm not looking for higher values. Okay. Now, Firas, coming to your question, you're saying, hey, the answer can come to C. That's absolutely correct. If you combine, you can get the answer. Okay. But in data sufficiency questions, what you need to do is, and that's a basic rule of data sufficiency, that you should first of all try and see if you can get the answer individually or not. If you can get the answer individually from the statement, then you should try and answer individually. Only and only if you're not able to answer individually, and keep this in mind, only if you're not able to, then only you should combine. Otherwise, you should not. Like in this case, if I can, as you can see, I can get my answer from statement 1. If I can get it, why would I combine it? Yes, Agnik, that is why I'm saying this method is universal. Hit and trial will always, there'll always be, they're error prone also, and it's not a universal way of solving questions where you're going to put value 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it's going to take a lot of time to do it. So in some, and I'm putting this now also, in some cases, it's quite possible, like, let's say, for example, if I've been given, and I'm taking a very simple one, by the way, if I'm given something like this, or if I'm given something like this, okay, then I might not do a hit and trial. I can very clearly see, okay, one could be 6-0, the other could be 8-0, the other could be 3-4. I can do that because this is easier to work with and I can see very clearly. So I might not set up an equation, set up all these things. But if I have a number which is huge, and in fact, GMAT will give you expressions which won't be this easy to solve. In those cases, you would need, if you don't want to do hit and trial, then this is the best way to go about doing it. Setting up this equation and finally having a smaller expression to work with. Okay, is this part clear, guys? Okay, if you have, I don't see any more questions. So let me go to the second part. Second part is very easy to work with. And in fact, let me go to the previous slide only because S2 I can do here. Now, in statement 2, we are only told that he spent a total of $4.8 on buying KitKat. So they're telling me that this value, 0.6K, is equal to $4.8. Okay. Now, from this, you can find out the value of K. Okay, you can get this definitely, but you're looking for the value of E. You want E. And that is something that you cannot get from statement 2. That is why this statement would be not sufficient. The first one was sufficient, and that's why the answer is going to be option A. Okay, I hope it's clear. If you have doubts, please ask. Yeah, as I said, John, see, as you said, can we use cyclicity as you mentioned? In this case, obviously, if you want to work with the unit digit and say, okay, 25 would give me 0, 5, 12 can give me 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. So let me see in what way can I get a 6. And if you think that can work out for you, you can. I'm never saying hit and trial won't work or making these inferences won't work, but it will still be a task for you to find an answer. For me, let's say, for example, if I know I've been given this equation and I know I want to get my answer, I will not waste my time. I'll simply start simplifying it. I'm not wasting time thinking about unit, digit, or anything at all. That is the only plus point of this methodology. Else, inferences and hit and trial is always there that you can, if you prefer using it, use it. I would not recommend it. Okay. So I hope this part is clear. Let me then move on to the next question. I don't see any more questions. Okay. Let's try the next one, guys. Okay, here's the next one. Once again, a lot of good learning in this one. So take your time. I'll give you about 2.5 minutes to do this one. So those of you who haven't responded, please do so quickly. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. So I have an interesting response so far. 38% of you think that the answer should be E. And I have about almost an equal split in B and C, where you think, some of you think that if I combine both these statements, I can get my answer. And if you think the answer should be B. So let's see which one is it. This is slightly difficult in nature, and there are a few things which I want to highlight in this question. So let me once again read it methodically and show you what are the things that I would have done while solving this question. Okay, so first part of the question is fairly simple. I've been told that Nana had only apples and oranges in a fruit basket. So on Sunday, she had certain apples and oranges. At the max, if I want, I can write A and OR or something like this if I want to, okay? But if I don't write any information in the piece of paper, that I think would still be okay. Now, I've been told at breakfast, she ate 1/8 of the apples. Okay, so the moment I get this information, I know, okay, I need to kind of write it like this: total apples. Let me assume it to be as A. Okay, what she's doing is that at breakfast, she's eating 1/8 of the apple. So I'm going to write it as 1/8 of apple. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down what is left. Okay, so I'll write, okay, A minus A by 8 is equal to 7A by 8. So this many is left. Okay, so whatever information that I had and whatever I could do with it, I've done. Now I'll move on to the next part. It says that if she didn't buy any fruits on Sunday, so she did not buy any fruits, and if she did not eat an apple and orange in parts, okay, so that's an important information. She's not buying any new fruits, or she's not buying any, she's not eating anything in like a half apple, a half orange. She's not doing all those stuff. I need to find out, did she have more than 20 fruits with her at the beginning of Sunday? So the important part is beginning. Okay. Now, I haven't taken anything for oranges, so let me write total oranges as OR. Okay. Now, the question is A plus OR greater than 20? Now, here is what I want to point one small thing, especially in difficult data sufficiency question, is that whenever they ask you a question that is something greater than 20 or less than 20, in those cases, a lot of people still, students, what they do is they're fixated on finding the exact value of A and OR, okay? And that's a problem, I think, that you need to get rid of. The question is not asking you the exact value of A, exact value of OR. They are not asking you what is the exact number of apples on Sunday or what is the exact number of oranges that she had on Sunday. The question is simply asking about more or less, right? Did she have more than 20 or not? And I simply need to answer yes, she had more than 20, or no, she did not have. I am not looking for an exact answer. So you should write that down, okay? That I just need to figure out whether it is greater than 20, and exactly write it in this way. Don't simply write it like greater or lesser. If you write it just words, then sometimes you're not very clear what you're exactly trying to do. Okay, so I prefer using a mathematical form of setting up the equation. This is what is meant by translation. Okay, so with this in mind, that I don't necessarily need the exact value, and this is all I have, that at breakfast she ate A by 8. Let me write it as like this, and she's left was 7A by 8. I'll go on and read the remaining statements. Okay, so the first statement is, at the beginning of the day on Sunday, she had 2 more oranges than apple. So she had 2 more oranges. So orange was 2 more than apple. So I'll write OR is basically 2 more than apples. I'll set up this equation. Okay. Now, again, as I told you, we are not looking for an exact value, so we should try and think a bit and try and see if we can come up with a tentative value, some kind of value to get the answer. So can anyone tell me, if I know that I ate A by 8 apples at breakfast, what kind of values can A take, or what is the implicit inference that you could have drawn here? What's the implicit inference about A, the number of apples? If I'm eating A 1/8 of the apples at breakfast, what can I infer about A? Good. Absolutely good. Very good. So all of you are correct, Harshdeep, Deepak, that A has to be a multiple of 8. A cannot be 10, because I've been very clearly told that she's not eating half an apple or an orange. She's eating whole of it. So obviously the A has to be of the form 8K. Either set it up like this, or at least make an inference that A can take values such as 8, 16, 24, as some of you have shown. Write it down, not a problem. Now, if A can be 8, 16, 24, so on and so forth, and I know from statement 1 is A orange is 2 more than apples, then my oranges can be 10, 18, 26, so on and so forth. Okay. My question is A plus OR greater than 20? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find A plus OR. Now A plus OR can be 8 plus 10, 18, which is less than 20. So my answer is no here. In this case, I have 16 plus 18, right, which is 34, which is greater than 20. So my answer is yes here, right? Now notice I'm getting two contradictory answers. The moment I get two contradictory answers, I can pause. I don't need to solve any further. Okay, I can say that this statement is not sufficient because it is not clearly telling me how whether the number of apple oranges is greater than 20. It may be greater than 20, it may not be greater than 20. I cannot be sure by just in the information that is given in statement 1. So my answer cannot be A, my answer cannot be D. I'll then jump to the second statement. Okay, so I'll pause here for about 10 seconds. If there's any query, any doubt in this statement, please feel free to ask. Again, notice taking the variable was easy in this case. You took AR, but what to do with that variable is very important. The moment you write A by 8, what you should do with it, you should be able to make that inference that it has to be a multiple of 8. Set up some values. Okay. Any doubt at all, guys? If not, then I will move on to the next statement. Okay, I don't see any doubts, which is good. Okay, so let's go to the next part. Now, the second statement is an interesting statement, and I deliberately gave this because this kind of language, like as many apples, as many as, basically this form, as many as, is sometimes used, and people end up making a lot of mistake. Okay, so I want to first of all show you the generic way. What does the statement mean? So you might get statements like this. For example, twice as many X as Y, for example. Okay. The structure is going to remain same, as many as. So this X basically represents apples in baskets, and this Y basically represents whatever she ate at lunch. Okay. So whenever you see a form like this, twice as many X as Y, what that means is you need to break it down. Twice as many X. So X is twice as many as something. What something? As Y. So you're going to write X is equal to 2Y. Okay, so X is twice as something. What twice it is? It is twice 2Y. So you'll set up your equation like this. So whenever you see a form like this, okay, and this twice can be replaced with anything. Okay, so let me put a Z here. So if you get a statement like this, Z as many X as Y, the moment you see a structure like this, you should be able to infer that X is equal to Z times Y. Okay, and I'm going to use this information, this structure, to set up my equation. Okay, so here I have apples in breakfast and 8 at lunch. Okay, so if I exactly set it the way it's given here, I need to write it like this: apples in breakfast is equal to 60%, because see, 2 times something. So in this case, I have 60%, so I write 60% of what? Whatever apples she ate at lunch. Okay, I'll pause here. Please let me know if this part is clear or not. If this part is clear, then the rest of the question, solving the rest of the question, is pretty easy. Let me bring up a yes or no poll quickly. Please let me know if this is clear or not. Okay, I can see it's clear to everyone, which is pretty good. So now, once you know this, now let me go back to the previous slide once, because there's one information that we had in the question stem. So from the question stem, remember, we have this information with us. We have all this information with us. And we know that at breakfast, okay, at breakfast, she had a eighth of apples. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, because she's talking, they're talking about apples in this case. Okay, Sudeep. So I'm not going to worry about anything else. So the only thing they are telling here is on Sunday she ate 60% as many apples in breakfast as she had in lunch. So I'm concerned about as many apples. So basically think of it in this way: apples in breakfast, in lunch, just to clarify it more. So this is like this: 60% as many in breakfast as in lunch. And what in breakfast, what in lunch? They're talking about apples. I'm just comparing apples. Okay, I hope Sudeep it's clear now. So now I know the amount of apples she had. They clearly told me that at breakfast I ate a eighth apple. So I can write it like this: a by 8 is equal to 60 by 100 is 3 by 5 apple she ate at lunch. So the apple that she's eating at lunch is 5a by 24. Okay, where a obviously is the total number of apples. Now, again, a lot of you will say, okay, this is again an equation not useful. Let me just chuck it and move on and end up marking the answer either as C or E. But again, tell me, what is the implicit assumption that I can make here about A? My bad, I'm keeping on saying assumption. Implicit inference. What's the implicit inference in this case? 5a by 24. What can I infer from here? Keep in mind, she did not eat any apple in parts or anything like that. Very good. Good, Sudeep. That's correct. So see, since I'm eating everything whole, 5a by 24 should be an integer. 5a by 24, for 5a by 24 to be an integer, the minimum value of a has to be 24. Okay, so if a is or if we want to be more precise, you can say that a has to be a multiple of 24. If it is not a multiple of 24, I won't get this as an integer, and I want this as an integer. Okay, now if the minimum value of a is 24 and I have and I want to figure out whether a plus or is greater than 20 or not, tell me, can't I answer this question now? Can't I answer this question? Doris, remember in the question stem it is given that she ate 1/8 of the apples. And I had set up the equation that the apple that she ate was a by 8. So I've just put that in the equation. I've just put on the left hand side a by 8, and then I took 5 to the other side and 3 to this side and ended up getting 5a by 24. Okay, I hope that answers your query, Doris. Okay, yes, good. So guys, all of you can see that I easily answer my question. I can say if this is 24, I don't really care what my orange is. I know this effectively is greater than 20. So this statement turns out to be sufficient. So very important thing, guys, to keep in mind whenever you have a question greater than, less than, don't simply discard it by thinking that you don't have, say, oranges or you don't have the exact value of A. The moment you fall for that kind of a trap that you look for an exact value, you'll always make a mistake. Okay. Number two, again, setting up the equation, like this is what I call translation kind of a problem, where if you don't know what is the meaning of twice as many x as y or things like this, it will be difficult for you to set up the equation. Thirdly is using whatever is given in the question stem. Now think about it. If you were someone who would have just read this, okay, you would have read it and said, okay, 1/8 apple she had eaten, and you would have not written all this thing, not even taken any variable in the starting, then there's a good chance that you would not have been able to set this equation. So I'm keeping the inference side part. If I just talk from the variables point of view, setting this equation would have been difficult. So it is very important to do pre-analysis, guys, and not only for this webinar, in general, for any question. Please make sure to do so. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I'm setting up the yes or no poll once again. If it's clear, please mark yes. I don't see any more questions except for Whipple. What is the level? This is a 7-level question, Whipple. Okay. Okay, I can see it's clear to most of you. So guys, let's move on to the third question. One sec, let me set it up. All right, here's the third question in front of you, and I can see a few of you are saying no. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask, guys. I'll try to respond it in the chat. Okay. In the meantime, you can start solving the third question. The 10 seconds, those of you who haven't responded, please do so. It's okay if you're not sure of the answer, just give it a shot. Okay, ending the poll now. Okay, so 43% of you think the answer should be A, and I do have about 30% who think that we need to combine the statement to get the answer. Can anyone tell me what concept do we have to use here to solve this question? What concept do we need to use to solve this question? Yes, Shubham, it will be available on YouTube. Deepak, Sudeep, Harsh. Okay, Harsh, Deepak, Sudeep, you're also correct. LCM is the correct answer. But yeah, we need to use the concept of remainders, divisibility and remainders, and the concept of LCM, both of them combined together to get the answer. So those of you who aren't aware of it, I'm going to just talk about it a little briefly to make you understand what's happening here. And especially those of you who have attended the previous webinar, you should be able to get the part about LCM very easily. So let's talk about the first thing. I'll come to the question, but in fact, let me start with the question only. Okay. So the question doesn't have much information. It just tells me that X lies between 99 and 1000. Okay. So if X lies between 99 and 1000, then that basically means that the values of X could be what, say 100, 101, 102, so on and so forth till 999. So once again, see, I've been not told directly, but this basically means that X is a 3-digit number. Okay, it cannot be a 2-digit number, it cannot be a 4-digit number, it has to be a 3-digit number. So that's an implicit inference that you should be able to draw directly. Okay. So if X is of the form, say, A, B, C, the question is asking what is the 10th digit of X. So I'm looking for the value of B. So I'm looking for this number. What is this? Okay, that's my question. Nothing else is given to me. So with this information in hand, I'll move on to the first statement, which says that when X is divided by any one of 5, 8, or 50, it leaves the same remainder. Now, this whenever you read a statement like this, and here is where I'm going to give you a separate example, that let's say, for example, when n is divided by, say, 5, the remainder is, say, 3. You need to use the concept of n is equal to q times d plus r, where q is the quotient, d is the divisor, and r is the remainder. So what you can write, set up the equation is n is equal to the quotient you don't know. It is being divided by 5, so the divisor is 5, and the remainder is 3. Okay. A simple example could be, let's say, for example, n is equal to 18. Okay. If I divide 18 by 5, I end up getting the remainder as 3. So I can write 18 as quotient is 3, my divisor is 5, and my remainder is 3. So this is the form that I'm talking about. N is equal to q times d plus r. Okay, so you should be able to, whenever you see a statement like this, you should be able to infer that I need to use the concept of this. Okay, now with this information, let's go back and try to set up the equation. Now they're telling me in this case that it leaves the same remainder. The problem here is that I haven't been told what that remainder is. I know when x is divided by 5, so I can write x is equal to, and I have to use this form, okay? X is equal to q1, quotient I don't know, divisor I know is 5, and the remainder is r. I don't know the remainder as anything, so I'm setting it up as r. Now, if you leave it and thinking, hey, I don't know the remainder, let me just chuck it and say the statement is not sufficient, that would be wrong. This is how you need to set up the equation, okay? The second equation would be x is equal to q2. The second divisor that has been given to you is 8. So you can say 8 plus r. And the third equation would be q3 times 50 plus r. Okay. Now this is a special kind of a situation. And let me show you why this is special. Let me take this plus r to the other side. Okay. So I can write it as x minus r is equal to 5q1. Okay. Again, let me take this r here. X minus r is equal to 8q2. And I can write this as x minus r is equal to 50q3. Okay, so x minus r is 5 times q1, x minus r is 8q2, x minus r is 50q3. I'll pause here for a moment. Please let me know whether this part is clear or not, okay? Because post that, then I'll tell you what is the meaning of this. This manipulation, if this part is equation, I'm setting it up is clear, please mark yes. No, Rohan, that's not necessary that the remainder has to be 0, no. That's slightly incorrect. We could have a common remainder if you want to. For example, if you take the number as n as say 121, Rohan, If you divide it by 3, 5, and 8, you'll always get the remainder as 1. Okay, so I hope that answers your query. Okay, so I can see it's clear to everyone. So let me come to this part. Now, what is the meaning of this? The meaning of this is that x minus r, this is how we need to infer, is a multiple of 5, multiple of 8. When I say 5q1, what does that mean? Multiple of 5, multiple of 8, multiple of 15. So if I want to find out, so the inference that I can draw is that if x is a multiple of 5, 8, and 50, then x has to be the multiple of, and remember in the previous webinar I talked about multiple. If you see the word multiple of 3 numbers, you can take the LCM. You can take the LCM and say, okay, if a particular number is divisible by all, is multiple of all 3, then I can find out the smallest number of which it would be a multiple of. So let me do this calculation separately, so that here I'll just set up the equation. I'll set up the equation here. Okay. So let's find out the LCM of 5. 8 is 2 cube, and 50 is 5 square times 2 to the power 1. Can anyone tell me what would be the LCM in this case? Especially those who attended my previous webinar, what would be my LCM? Come on, guys, it's easy. LCM of 5, 8, and 25. Okay, 200, 240. Okay, guys, remember what I told you was you just take the 2 prime numbers which are there. In this case, I have 2 and 5. Yeah, Vishnu, yeah, correct. Shraddha, you slightly, the slight mistake there. You take the prime numbers and you take their highest powers. That's it. And this is basically 200. Okay. So now you can say that if x minus r is a multiple of all these 3, then x minus 5 will definitely be a multiple of 200. It's a multiple, so I need to take some other variable. So you can set up your equation like this. So you can say x minus r is basically 200 times q4 plus something. So x, now I'll take the r to the other side and say x is 200 q4 plus r. Okay, and this is your final representation of x. Okay, I hope this part is clear, everyone. If you have any doubts, please feel free to ask. There's one more small thing which I did not mention in the starting, which ideally I should have, was whenever we are talking about remainder, okay, whenever we are talking about the general form of a remainder, so when I talk about n is equal to qd plus r, this remainder always needs to be less than the divisor. Okay, so if I'm dividing a number by 5, okay, the possible remainders can be 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. There is no other possibility. I cannot have my remainder as 5. That's not possible. I cannot have my remainder as 6. So the remainder is always less than the divisor. So if in the question stem, if the statement they're telling me that x when divided by 5, 8, and 50, the smallest is 5, right? So I can infer that the remainder, if there is any remainder, then the remainder can either be 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. It cannot be anything else. I cannot have a remainder as 5, not possible. Because the divisor is 5. One of the divisors is 5. Since one of the divisors out of 3 is 5, the maximum remainder that can go is 4. Now think about it. Think about what I have here, 200q plus r. I have 2 zeros here, okay? Kritika, what I'm saying is that the remainder can never be more than the divisor. So for example, if you have 6, you can, if I'm dividing a number by 5, I cannot say that my remainder would be 6. The remainder would be, why is it Q4? Because it is a multiple of 3 numbers. X minus r is not exactly 200, Kritika. X minus r is a multiple of 200. So if you want to write it as Q4, if you want to write it as K, doesn't matter. The point is that it is a multiple of 200. So how do I represent? If a particular number is a multiple of say 10, I write it as 10K, 10 multiplied by a variable. So if I know X minus R is a multiple of 200, I'll write it as 200 times Q4. Okay, I hope that answers your query. Okay, so guys, as I was saying, the remainder would be what? The remainder would be either 0 or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. So that is going to affect the unit digit, right? That's going to affect the unit digit. I'm interested in the tens digit. Notice that the tens digit is always going to remain 0. Take a few examples. Let's take Q4 is equal to say 1. You'll get X is equal to 200 plus R. Take X equal to 2. You'll get 400 plus R. Okay, if you want to take 3, take 3, not a problem. 800 plus R. So what, and this R is going to affect the unit digit. The tens digit is going to remain unaffected. It is always going to be 0 only and nothing else. And the question is asking me about the tens digit. What is going to be the 10 digits of X? So I can say that the tens digit is going to be 0. Notice that in this case also I could not find out the exact value of X. That's a very important thing which I want to point out here, guys. See, it's again a question. If you are fixated on finding the exact value of X, you might end up saying that statement 1 is not sufficient. But that was not what I was looking for. I was looking for tens. So my whole focus, even after getting this, was on tens. Can I get a unique answer or not? Okay, so that's why statement 1 is sufficient. So my answer would either be A or D. Okay. Now let's look at the second statement. Second statement is pretty easy. Now, if you know n is equal to qd plus r, you can, oops, I ran out of space. Oh, I have space. Okay. So x is divided, when x is divided by 50, the remainder is 4. Again, use this formula. You can say a quotient you don't know. Divisor is 50 plus 4. Okay. And you're interested in the tens digit. Once again, think about it. If you take q as, say, and it has to be a 3-digit number, by the way. So let's start with q is equal to 2. If I put 2, I'll get 104. So my tens digit is 0, which is fair enough, good enough. But if I take q as, say, 3, I end up getting 154. Right? If I put 3 here, I'll get 154. And now I'm getting the tens digit as 5. So from second statement, I'm getting contradictory answers. In one case, I'm getting 0. In the other case, I'm getting 5. And since I'm getting contradictory answers, I'll say this statement is not sufficient. Thus, the correct answer in this case is going to be option A. Please let me know if this is clear or not. Notice that this was a question where you had to use a conceptual knowledge of divisibility. So sometimes while setting up equations, you should ideally know the concept also of n is equal to. If you don't know this, then you might not be able to set up the equation. So sometimes taking variables also depends on the concept. Second thing is the special cases, like questions like this. In fact, there is a question official guide also. I don't remember the question number, but there's a question which talks about, it's a similar question where they'll tell you about 3 different numbers and they'll say the remainder is the same. And they'll ask you to find the value of n or something like that. So GMAT does test this. So ideally you should know whenever the remainders are same, what you need to do to solve the question. So you find out the minimum case by finding the LCM and then getting the answer. Okay. So I can see it's clear to everyone. So let's move on to the next question, guys. Here's the next one. Once again, an interesting one. And I am going to give you 2.5 minutes for this one too. And I've added the poll. So all the best, guys. And I can see n is the number which is getting divided. So if I'm dividing, say, 18 by 5, then my n is 18. Okay. This is something which you learn in the divisibility video lesson. So once you go to number properties intervention. Okay, guys, let me end the poll now and let's start the discussion. I have enough responses, and frankly, this one almost all of you have done correctly, which is good. So let's end the poll. Okay, so 67% of you marked the answer as D, and as far as I remember, the answer is D only. So good job on this one. Quick question here before I start discussing it. When you read the question that a sequence S consists of 7 consecutive multiples of a positive number, what did you do with this? Did you write something down, or you simply said, okay, let me just read along and do whatever I can do with it? Okay, or did you take something, 7 consecutive multiples, what did you do? Okay, Harsh says it's in AP. Okay. John says AP. N, 2N, 3N, 4N. Okay. So if it's an AP, so did you write an equation like Sudeep has written, n2, n3, and 4n? Or did you write, and this is okay, a plus 1k, a plus 2k. Okay, great. So so far, most of you are correct, but the right representation I can see has been done by only one person. You might have luckily got the answer. That's a different thing. But the right representation is, see, I'm not saying the first 7 consecutive integer, guys. Okay, so if you have written it like this, a, 2a, 3a, 4a, 5a, 6a, something like this is not correct. This is not correct because I'm not saying that I'm taking the first 7 multiple of a positive integer. So if I tell you, okay, write down the first 7 multiples of, 3, then you can say 3, 6, 9, 12, blah, 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 blah. Okay. But I'm saying just 7 consecutive multiples. So it could start from anywhere. Okay. So the right representation, as I think only John and Andrea has written correctly, is, oops, my bad, guys, just one sec. Yeah, only 2 of you have written it correctly. So you need to write it in this way. You take your number as, say, if you want to take it as n, take it as n, and then say the multiples are going to be kn, k plus 1n, k plus 2n, k plus 3, k plus 4, k plus 5, k plus 6. So these are your multiples. So you just be careful when you're reading it, whether we are talking about the first 7 multiples or just any 7 multiples of an integer. Okay, where n is any positive integer. So here n is any positive integer and there are 7 consecutive multiples. Which ones? I have no clue. Okay, so this is the first thing which you should do. Okay, post that, in fact, to be on the safe side, let me write it down. N is the integer that I'm talking about. Okay, and k is the multiple part. So let's jot down 2. And it's an increasing sequence, so it makes sense to write it like this. Okay. What I need to find out is the last number multiple of 3 or not? So I need to find out whether k plus 6 times n is a multiple of 3. So whether it is 3 times something or not, that is what I need to figure it out. Okay. Now, before moving to the statement, because if I make that inference here only, I'll be able to get my answer. If k plus 6 times n needs to be a multiple of 3, in what ways can I do that? What are the different scenarios? Can anyone tell me in which this can be a multiple of 3? K plus 6 times n needs to be a multiple of 3. What are the different scenarios in which this product can be a multiple of 3? Come on, guys, it's easy. If k is 0, k is a multiple of 3, and Anish says n is a multiple of 3, n is a multiple. Correct. Almost all of you are correct in one way or the other. One way is that if n is a multiple of 3, simple. Okay. If n is a multiple of 3, then 3 times anything will be a multiple of 3. The other is if k is a multiple of 3. Even if k is a multiple of 3, because 6 is a multiple of 3, this k plus 6 will turn out to be a multiple of 3. For example, if k is 3, so 3 plus 6, 9 will be a multiple of 3. If you take 6 plus 6, it's going to be a multiple of 3. So k could be a multiple of 3. And third case, obviously, if both of them are multiple of 3. Okay. So in short, your inference before going to the statement is that if I can figure out if either or both are multiple of 3, I can get my answer. As long as I can figure out whether n or k is a multiple of 3, I have my answer. That's all. Okay, I hope it's clear. Now with this information, you move on to the first statement. Okay, so the first statement is that the arithmetic mean of S is a multiple of 3. Now, the arithmetic mean in this case, since these are multiples, the arithmetic mean is the middle number because there are 7 numbers. So the arithmetic mean usually lies in the middle. So which is k plus 3n. And those of you who added it up and got the answer, you would have got the same answer. But keep in mind, if they are consecutive multiples or if they're in AP constant form, then the middle number actually turns out to be the median. So I can infer that k plus 3 times n is a multiple of 3. Okay, 3 times something. Now, if k plus 3 times n is a multiple of something, you can infer, right? Either n is a multiple of 3, okay, or k plus 3 is a multiple of 3, which means k is a multiple of 3. So this statement is somehow telling you, third case also could be that both are multiple of 3. Okay, that's also possible. So this kind of tells you that any one of them or both of them is definitely a multiple of 3. And that is what you're looking for. Okay, I hope this part is clear. Please let me know. Let me bring up the yes or no poll quickly and let me look at the chat. I think there are some queries which I'll try to answer. So if this part is clear, please mark yes. And if there's any doubt in this one, please feel free to ask if there's any question at all. Okay, I can see it's clear to everyone. And n plus 1 is not a valid sequence. Could you please explain why did you take kn? Shruti, we are taking kn because I'm talking about multiples of a positive integer, okay? Multiples. Like 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, blah, blah, blah. These are multiples of 3. How would you write it? 3 times 1, 3 times 2, 3 times 3, 3 times 4, 3 times 5. N is your number, and this 2, 3, 4, 5 is your k part. K plus 1, k plus 2, k plus 3, k plus 4, k plus 5. Okay, since the question is not saying that you are taking the first 7 consecutive multiples, it can start from anywhere. Like for example, I can start from here also. 9, 15, 18, these are all multiple of 3. Okay, I hope this part is clear. Yes, so median in this case and the mean is going to be the same. Shruti, I hope this part is definitely clear. Statement 1, I hope everyone is clear, because k plus 3 times n is multiple of 3 means either n is a multiple of 3 or k plus 3 is a multiple of 3 or both of them are multiple of 3, and that is what I'm looking for. So I can say that this statement is sufficient. Okay. Second statement is very easy. Second statement itself tells me that the first statement is a multiple of 3. So they're telling me k times n. This k times n is a multiple of 3. If k times n is a multiple of 3, then that means either n is a multiple of 3 or k is a multiple of 3, or both of them are multiple of 3, which is what I'm looking for. If any one of them turns out to be a multiple of 3, I can get my answer. So even this turns out to be sufficient. So the correct answer in this case is going to be option D, which about 65% of you marked, which is good. So the only learning in this case which I wanted to give you was regarding the 7 consecutive multiple parts. And obviously the inference is always there. That's a learning which I always want you to have for all questions. But while writing your expressions, make sure to check whether it's any 7 consecutive or the first 7 consecutive. Okay. Okay, I can see that it's clear to all of you. So let's move on to the next one. Here's the next question. It might seem difficult, but it is not. This is a 650 level question. Take your time to read it. I'll give you about 3 minutes to do it. If you read it slowly, steadily, the way I've taught you to do, you should be able to get the answer very quickly. Okay, I think there's confusion between A and B. 38% of you think that it should be B, but I have 27% of you who marked it as A. What do you think of this question? Was this too wordy, too difficult? What's your opinion on this question? Okay, Shubham says bouncer. Okay. I think only the last part should be the bouncer. Most of the part should be fine till, I think till here it should be fine. Till this part, but what the question is asking might seem a bit strange. If you break it down properly, it's easy. If you don't, then yes, it might turn out to be a bouncer. To learn the good translation skills, too wordy and difficult. Okay. Let's see how we break down such information. Okay, and I'm going to do this in this particular slide only. Let's try it out together. So it's given that 2 trains, and I'm going to guys show you more of an RC question. Okay, so I'm going to show you exactly the way I would have solved in the exam. Okay, what diagrams would I draw, what things would I write, and each and everything. Okay, so the question says that 2 trains, T1 and T2, arrive at station S at 1 p.m. So I might draw, a station S, and I might say, okay, T1, T2. Somewhere down the line, maybe in fact, if possible, I'll write it here only 1 p.m., something like this. Okay. After half an hour of halt, so this part is done. See, I'm breaking it down. After a halt of half an hour, okay, so basically at 1:30, train T1 left the station and traveled at a constant speed of 30 miles per hour in a straight line towards north from station S. Okay, so 1:30 part was clear. The train is traveling at a speed of 30 miles per hour towards north. So I would kind of maybe redraw it. Since I have a pen, I'm kind of rubbing it down and saying, okay, at 1:30, the 1 o'clock information is not that important. What is important at 1:30, T1 is moving in this direction and T1 is traveling at a speed of 30 miles per hour. Okay. Train T2 departed from station S at 2 p.m. Now, at this moment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do two things. Okay, one is the moment I read 2 p.m. and I know train 1 started at 1:30, I would kind of just very quickly write down how much distance T1 might have covered till now. So I would say at 2 p.m. Okay, T1 in half an hour, distance is speed multiplied by time. So speed is 30 miles per hour. Okay, if time is half hour, so I'm covering 15 miles. So I'll write down T1 has covered 15 miles so far at 2 p.m. So I want this information to be there on my screen, on my page, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Now, so it departed at 2 p.m. and traveled at a constant speed of 100 miles per hour in a straight line towards south from station S. So now the visualization is pretty clear. Okay, at 1:30 p.m., one of them train T2 started and it started moving in this direction. So at 1:30 p.m., whatever is the situation, I have it in front of me. T2 is moving and the speed of T2 is 100 mph. The speed of this is 30 mph. Okay, all the information in the diagram is there with me till here. If both the train traveled indefinitely without changing the initial direction, so they are moving and we are not being told at till what time or whatever, nothing has been mentioned. Okay, now the question part. What is the ratio? So I'm looking for a ratio. So I need something in the numerator, something in the denominator. What is the ratio of time? Okay, I need the ratio for time. So I'm looking for some time. It takes T2. So I'm looking for the time taken by T2 to cover 1/3 of the distance that T1 has traveled. Okay, so let's break it down. So ratio of our time. So they're talking about the first part, the top part here, what I need to put here. Okay. Yeah, my bad. Thank you for pointing this out. This is 2 p.m. Correct. Sudeep, you're right. It's 2 p.m. So the top part is I need to find out ratio of time. So I'm looking for a time T2 takes to cover 1/3 of the distance that T1 has traveled. So see, at 2 p.m. I know the situation, what the situation is. What I'm going to say is, okay, let's assume the time to be, say small t or whatever you want to take, or take x, say, for example, let's say, okay, let's say the time taken by T2 is x. Time taken by T2 is x. What is this time? The time taken to cover 1/3 of the distance by T1. Okay, so in this x time, T2 is going to cover how much distance? I know the speed, I know the time, so I'll say T2 is going to cover 100 times x. This is the distance covered by T2, train T2. Okay, this distance should be 1/3 of the distance that T1 has traveled. Okay, 1/3 of the distance T1 has traveled. Now the important part is that this x that I'm taking is at 2 p.m. Okay, from 2 p.m. I'm taking that time. Okay, because I'm considering T2. All my timing is being considered with respect to T2. So the distance, this T is basically for T1 will cover how much distance? It will cover what's the speed? 30 miles now. So it will cover 30x, but it has also covered 15 miles also. So I'll add that and say that this is the, so 1/3 distance that is traveled by T1 is 30x plus 15. And the question is asking what is the ratio of the time that T2 takes to cover 1/3 of the distance that T1 has traveled. Let's pause here. Tell me if this part is clear. And keep in mind, this is something which I've got, which is only for the first part. It's a ratio. So I haven't done anything for the bottom part yet. Okay. But is this part clear? If there's any doubt, please ask. Keep in mind, this X is the time from 2 p.m. So at 2 p.m., T1 will cover 15 miles plus 30x. Okay, so those I can see about 10% of you are saying no. So please ask question, guys. If there are any doubts, please feel free to ask. Understand it in this way. Let me give you an example so it might be clear to you. say for example, let's take the time as say, and hypothetically speaking, let's take it as 4 p.m. Okay, let's take the time as 2 hours basically. Okay, so T1 has actually traveled 2.5 hours, right? If I'm saying that T2 has traveled 2 hours, if I take the time of T2 as 2 hours, T1 has traveled 2.5 hours, right? Because it started at 1:30. So I'm breaking it down into two parts. Half hour. In this half hour, I know T1 has covered 15, and this 2 hour he'll be covering 30 times 2, but I don't know this number. That is why I've taken it as X. Okay. Now, after this, you just need to solve it. You'll say 300X is equal to 30X plus 15, 270. X is equal to 15. X is equal to 15 by 270. Okay, you can cancel it by 3 and then by 5 and get 5 by 18. So this is the top part. This is 1 by 18. Okay, what is X? X is the time it takes T2 to cover 1/3 of the distance. Okay. Now ratio is always something to something, right? So notice this part was something to, now this is the second part. Now they're telling me what I need to put in the denominator. Denominator is the time it takes T2 to cover thrice the distance it takes. So now take that time as Y, say for example, Y hours. So Y hours, how much distance will T2 travel? T2 will travel 100 times Y. Okay, this should be thrice, so I'll lay 3 times the distance traveled by T1. T1 will travel how much? 30Y plus he has already, it has already traveled 15. So I'll put 15 here. Okay. If anyone has any questions, any doubts till this point, please feel free to ask. I'll find the value of Y and then I'll put it in and then I'll get the answer. So that won't take a lot of time. So any questions till this point, please ask. In fact, let me very quickly solve it also. I written everything correctly here. 30, yes. So I'll get 100Y is equal to 45 plus 90Y. 10Y is equal to 45, or Y is equal to 9 by 2. So you put 9 by 2 here, which is 1 by 18 times 2 by 9. You cancel this out and you end up getting 1 upon 81, which your answer is A. Okay, so feel free to ask questions, but keep in mind that you have to, and the first disclaimer that I'll put here is that these kind of questions take about 3 minutes to solve in the exam also. Okay, so don't think that I have attended this session now, so when I get questions like these, I'll be able to do it in 2 minutes. Not going to happen. For some people, obviously can happen, but if I talk about majority of people, it might take some time. Okay, so the key here is to spend 1.5 minutes if required to set up your equation. Okay, even if it takes you, for example, think about it, even if it takes you 2 minutes to set up these two equations. Okay, let's think for a moment about that. 2 minutes. It won't take you more than a minute to simplify and get these two values and find the answer. So the key here is to spend time in finding these. John, we are equating it because we are translating it. Time taken to, how do you translate stuff like this? Do you read it like this? I need the time it takes, forget the time for a moment. T2 covers thrice the distance that T1 has traveled. So if I say T2 is covering thrice distance covered by T1, what will I write? Distance covered by T2 has to be thrice the distance covered by T1, right? This is how I'm going to write it. That is why I'm equating the distance. And I'm not equating both the distance, I'm equating the distance based on the condition. So second condition was thrice the distance, so I put in thrice the distance. The first condition was 1/3 of the distance, so I put 1/3 of the distance. Okay. Guys, 700 level, don't worry. These are all 700 level questions that I'm discussing. You're saying you did not understand which part. Where did I do 150 times 2? I cannot see. Where did I do 150 times 2? Jan, I'm not sure which part are you talking about. This part is simply 100. That was, I was trying to explain it to you when I took 2 hours. Okay, 2 hours was just a way of explaining it to you. Otherwise, I'm taking a X and solving the question. Okay. key here is to remember, see, whenever it's word ratio, how would you break it down? You would read it like this, that if I want a ratio, I need the ratio of two entities. Okay, so most of the questions would be like this: ratio of x and y, ratio of x to y. So you look for the breakpoint. Where is this breakpoint coming? In this case, the breakpoint is here. Time of something to the time of something. So I'm looking for two different times. I'm looking for x upon y. Okay. Yeah. So see, the point is that train 1 at 2 p.m. has already covered 15 miles, and I'm talking about the distance traveled by T1. So if he has covered 15 miles, I need to include that 15. And apart from that, whatever distance that train T1 will be covering in X hours, I need to include that. So in X hours, if train T1 is traveling with 30 miles per hour, so I'm going to do 30 times X plus 15. This is the distance traveled by T1. And the question stem is telling me that the distance covered by T2 should be 1/3 of the distance covered by T1. So I'm writing as 1/3 of 30x plus 15. Okay, so I hope that's clear. No, Sagar, it's not 650. Don't worry about it. It's 700 level. But notice the only thing that is difficult is the last part, nothing else. Mostly the rest of the part is very easy to settle. Now, the point that I'm making is don't worry about what the level is. Point is learn. What I'm basically trying to say here is that whenever you're trying to find out the ratio, the problem is that you read all this in one go. The moment you read everything in one go is where you end up not setting up the equation. The learning that you need to take here is that you need to break it down. So if it's a ratio, find out where you need to break it. Where is the first part? Where is the second part? The moment you figure out what's the first part, what's the second part, you will be able to solve it. Okay. Okay, let's do the last question. The last question, by the way, is a 650 level question, guys. It's not that difficult. So let's end on a high note. Try this out quickly. And let me bring up the poll. If there are any more questions, again, do feel free to ask. No problem at all. I'll try to answer them as quickly as possible. Another 30 seconds, guys, and I'm going to end the poll. Sagar, if you want to put in your opinion regarding the question while others are solving, I would request you to put a private chat. Okay, I can see that most of you are getting the correct answer, which is good. Another 10 seconds, and I'm going to end the poll. Okay, so most of you in this one ended up marking the answer as B. I have again a few of you who fell for the trap and ended up marking C as the answer. So let's discuss. This is a very simple question, not a lot of calculation also involved in this. The only thing in questions like these is for you to understand that can I use all the quantity that is given to me in the question? Can I use all the quantity that is given for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium or not? Right. So here what they're saying is that in the experiment, the nitrogen, phosphorus, okay, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, they are being mixed in the ratio of 5:4:1. So if you have done my previous webinars, I think I might have told you that whenever you see a ratio like this, it's best to, if you want to write them in absolute values, it is best to write them as say 5x, 4x, and x. Okay. So for that experiment, the total quantity that I'm using, so the maximum weight of the fertilizer would be in this case 10x. Okay. So if I want to find out what is the maximum weight of the fertilizer, I need to find out the value of x. If I can get x, I'll know what is the weight of the fertilizer. Okay. As simple as that. That's what they're asking. But understand that while we are creating this, fertilizer, okay, we need to have sufficient number of nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium in this particular ratio to create the fertilizer. And now in this case, I have 14 kgs of nitrogen. Okay, phosphorus is how much? Oh, sorry, 18 kg of, yeah, my bad. 14 kgs of phosphorus. Okay, and I have 20 kgs of potassium. And I know I need to take them in the quantity 5x, 4x, and x. Now I have three possibilities. You need to try and start thinking, what if this 5x that I have, what if I take this whole thing is equal to 18 kgs? What if I use all the 18 kgs of nitrogen? Can I do that? Okay. If I take 18 kgs of nitrogen, then in that case, I'd get excess 3.6. Okay. If I take x as 3.6, I get this as 36, which most of you have marked the answer as. Okay. But you need to check if you're taking this as 3.6, do you have sufficient number of the remaining stuff or not? Okay. So if you take, obviously this is 18 kg that you're taking. Now, if you put 3.6 here, how much would you get? You would get 14.4 kgs, right? So what does this mean? This means that if you want to use all the 18 kgs of nitrogen to create the mixture, then I would need 14.4 kgs of phosphorus and 3.6 kgs of potassium. Now, potassium is not a problem because I have 20 kg. So from that 20 kg, I can easily take 3.6 kg, easy, not a problem. But I don't have 14.4 kgs of phosphorus. If I don't have 14.4 kgs of phosphorus, I will not be able to make 36 kgs of the fertilizer. Okay, that is the only understanding that you need to have. So those of you mark 36 or anything else, is this part clear or not? Why 36 won't be your answer? Please mark yes if this is clear. So if I'm using all of nitrogen, if 5x is 18, then I get 80x as 6. And this tells me that I need 14.4, which I don't have. Okay. So that means I cannot use the whole of nitrogen. That's the inference that you should be able to draw. So now the next step would be to think in this way. Can I take this? Can I have 4x? Can I use all of phosphorus? Okay. So here, if you do that, you'll get 3.5. Okay. Now, when you take 3.5, everything works out well. X is 3.5. You have 20 kgs. You can take 3.5, not a problem. If you take this as 3.5, even this is not a problem, right? Because you'll be using 17.5 kgs and you have 18 kgs with you. So even this won't be a problem. You can take 75 kgs of this, all 14 kgs of this, and 3.5 kgs of this. So in this case, I end up getting 35 kg. So the maximum weight of the fertilizer can be 35 kgs. I'm not taking the last one because, right? If I take x is equal to 20, that's not going to work. Because if I take x, potassium was x. If I take x as 20, then I would need 5 times 20, 4 times 20 kgs of, potassium and phosphorus and nitrogen. And I don't have that. So the last option is not possible. I cannot use my whole potassium. That's not possible. I cannot use all my nitrogen. That's not possible. So the only possibility is to take whole of phosphorus and then take whatever the remaining nitrogen and potassium is needed. So the correct answer in this case would be option B. Okay. Please let me know if it is clear. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask. So the only thing, the reason I gave you this question was for you, there are two things. Once again, is to set up the equation in ratios. I have seen people specifically not writing it in this way. There are a lot of questions where if you work without setting up a variable and solving the question, especially in ratios, you're going to face a lot of problem. So my advice would be to always take ratio, write it in absolute form, and then do your inference that you need to do. Okay, I can see it's clear to everyone, which is great. So guys, we have come to the end of the webinar now. If you have any questions regarding, GMAT prep or Quant prep or any questions at all with respect to GMAT Wiz courses also, please feel free to ask. I am there for 10 minutes and I can answer and I can take up any queries that you might have. I think I mentioned the last time also that we will be launching a mocks on 15th. So we are going as planned and we will be able to launch it on the 15th of March. So those of you who are planning to, take up a course and start studying for GMAT, I would highly recommend looking at GMAT Wiz, because post our launch, we may end up increasing our prices. So if you're looking for a course which has everything, question bank, course, mocks, this would be a right opportunity for you. Apart from that, feel free to ask me any questions. I'll be more than happy to answer. Okay, Abhi is asking me, can we also say that since 14 keys is the lowest amount, we can get the answer by just utilizing. It depends on the ratio, Abhi, in what ratio we are mixing also. That's not necessarily that since phosphorus is the lowest, we'll end up utilizing it. For example, there could be a chance that the amount of the other quantities that we are using, they might be needed in very small ratios or very high ratios. So depending on what ratio I'm mixing, I'll be taking a call which one would be fully utilized and which one will not be fully utilized. Okay. Sagnik is asking, I'm already a student. Will I get marks? Sagnik, it depends. If you are a GMAT prep student, that means if you have access to both quant and verbal, then yes, you will be getting the access to the marks. So for now, marks are only for people who have GMAT prep. Okay. Yes, Jan, the video will be available on YouTube. So I am sharing I've shared the YouTube link, by the way, but if you have joined late, you might not be able to see it. So I'm sharing it again. This is the YouTube link. Feel free to subscribe to it. Whenever we, put up a new video, you will be able to get the notification. Apart from that, I'm also sharing my Calendly link. So if you want to talk to us before, deciding whether you want to take up GMAT quiz or not, please feel free to book up a session with us. Okay. Babuk is asking, I see OG21 references. Babuk, you can just drop a mail to support and we'll send you the references. Okay, just drop a mail to support@gmatquiz.com and I will, the support team will basically share the reference for both quant and verbal. Okay. You're welcome, Pooja. Sagar is asking, what would you say for someone who has scored 700 in GMAT and now has been advised to further? See, Sagar, that would be a very generic advice that I would be able to give you. From what I can see is, you need to work on your verbal, which is very obvious. But I need to look at your attempts data. I need to know which section you are good and which section you are not doing well in. Unless until I don't have those data points, it will be very difficult for me to, advise and tell you where specifically you need to focus on. When I say where specifically you need to focus on, I mean which part of verbal you need to focus on, whether it's SC, CR, RC, or anything in particular also, topic-wise also. Without more data points, it would be difficult to suggest. So if you want to talk about that, you can book up a calendar link. I've shared the calendar link, book a session, and then you can discuss it in detail if you want to. And when you come for if you're booking a session, do come up, do make sure that you have some data points with you, so that you can let us know where you're doing, where you have been doing well and where you haven't been. Okay. You're welcome, Andrea. I'll be glad to know that you like this session. Any other question, guys? Okay, I don't see any more questions, so I am ending the session now. All the best, guys. And okay, Shubham is asking, is the session chargeable? Shubham, which sessions are you talking about? If you're talking about these webinars that we are taking, yes, these are free, but we do run, tutoring sessions, and obviously the courses, we have our online course also. Those are definitely chargeable. You can go to gmatwiz.com, www.gmatwiz.com. I'm sharing the link, and you can look at our offerings also if you want to. If you're talking about the Calendly link, no, they are not chargeable, but you should have, some agenda of what you want to talk about. So when you're booking the link, make sure to jot down what exactly do you need to talk about. Okay, that's the only request. Don't book a session without mentioning the agenda. You're welcome, Sagar. Okay. Okay, guys. So I'm ending the session now. All the best. And if you have any more questions, feel free to write to us at support@gmatquiz.com, and we'll be more than happy to help you out. Okay. Take care, guys. Bye.